Europe's newest and largest library has recently opened in Birmingham, right here in England. And who opened it? None other than Malala Yousafzai. She's the Pakistani teenager who was shot in the head by the Taliban because of her love of books and learning and her fight for girls' right to an education in Pakistan.
A room without books is like a body without soul. And I say, a city without books and a city without library is like a graveyard. Let us not forget that even one book, one pen, one child, and one teacher can change the world.
I interviewed Malala and I felt firsthand the power of a child with a book, but she also exemplifies the threat that anyone with a book poses to extremists everywhere. It's no coincidence that burning books is often one of the first acts of a dictatorship. Burning books is like burning memory, history, of people's very existence, as I witnessed when Sarajevo's magnificent Austro-Hungarian library was shelled and burned during the Bosnian War. The heroism, though, of ordinary citizens making up a bucket brigade to douse and save their books, their treasures, is perhaps an even more powerful statement. Now, the novelist and screenwriter Neil Gaiman has made a passionate case for the power of books, of libraries, and of imagination. In a lecture presented by the British advocacy group, the Reading Agency, earlier this month, Gaiman says that leaders who would close libraries in the name of ideology or in the name of austerity are closing the gates to the future. And Neil Gaiman joins me live now in the studio. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
So with your passion, just how did you react to listening to Malala? You know, she's 16, making such a convincing case.
It's so convincing and it's so true. It's one of the things that absolutely fascinates me right now, is giving books to kids, educating the young, giving them access to reading and to fiction is one of the most important things we can possibly do.
Do you think it is really under threat?
Yes, I really do. And I think it's under threat, though, not because of evil. I think it's under threat because, A, you have austerity, and B, there is an absolutely mistaken idea that a library is shelves of books somewhere, and why do you need shelves of books? You can have 1 million books on your iPad, so why would you worry about this thing? Let's close it and save money. And it misses everything I think that libraries are good for, and librarians are good for. And libraries as common spaces, libraries as places where you can discover what you like, where a child can walk along, pull books off a shelf, where those who are not internet savvy can go and discover books.
And you've talked about the unique experience, the journey, the imagination that books, libraries can give a child. Tell me about that.
I was a booky kid. I will never forget the joy of getting my parents to drop me off at the local library on their way to work and just going in and reading my way through the children's library, going and exploring the card catalogue back when they had card catalogues, pulling books off the shelf and then nervously edging out into the adult world and dealing with librarians, discovering the joy of things like the interlibrary loan, where you can tell them you want a book they don't have and they will go and get it for you.
Magic.
Absolute magic. And I think the most important thing is that you are teaching a child how to imagine. And the imagination, it's a muscle. It's a really important thing if you want to build the future, if you want to create a literate generation, if you want to create a generation that is not criminal.
Before I get to the cover of what you've just brought in, I want to just follow up on what you've just said, and you've quoted it before, what Albert Einstein said, that if you want your children to be intelligent, he said, read them fairy tales. If you want them to be more intelligent, read them more fairy tales.
What I love about that is it's telling you a bunch of things. First of all, it's telling you read to children. I think that's an obligation. I think as parents, as friends, as adults, the joy of reading to children, the joy of doing the voices, the joy of finding some time where you are not being distracted by telephones, by televisions, by all of the glorious distractions of the 21st century, and you make some time and you read and tell stories. is huge. And it tells children that they can go into these books, into these forests of words. They can take these 26 symbols and a handful of punctuation marks and build them into stories themselves.
And you've spoken very convincingly, for instance, to students in the United States, among others, and I was really struck by what you said about the perils of success and the virtues of making mistakes and failures and learning. And you said that once upon a time you misspelled the name Caroline, and from that, I presume, came Coraline,
exactly,
your book, and the famous, famous film. Tell me a little bit about mistakes and what kids should know growing up.
I think what you need to know, one of the things you need to know is that mistakes are fine. There's nothing wrong with mistakes. Mistakes demonstrate that you're actually out in the world and you're doing something. You are active, you're engaged. I worry because I meet people who want to be writers, or they want to be artists, or they want to be musicians, but they're sure it has to be perfect. And that terror of trying to be perfect stops them doing anything. They do nothing. What I try and tell people is use your mistakes, treasure your mistakes. I remember typing a letter to somebody named Caroline and looking down, and I'd mistyped it into Coraline, and I thought, that should be a name. What a great name. I wonder what somebody like that would be like. And the next thing, I wrote my book, and then a few years later, I'm at the Academy Awards, seeing if we were going to win. We didn't, but it was great.
What about, you know, scaring the pants out of children?
Oh, I think...
With that book?
It's such a great English tradition, though, great British tradition. For me, it was Doctor Who.
Yeah.
For me, as a little kid, it was the joy of watching Doctor Who from behind the sofa where they couldn't get out and get you. And it taught me something really fun, which is it's okay to be scared in small doses. It's okay to be scared safely, and it teaches you to be brave. Caroline's all about being brave.
And you brought Sandman?
I did.
That's your comic?
It's the first...
And it's the first one that's come out in more than a decade.
It is. I wrote the last...
Let's see if we can...
I wrote the last Sandman in 1996. It was published. And now it's the 25th anniversary. Yeah. And I thought, 25 years after the first one came out, I have to go back and write more. So I'm doing 6 episodes, and the beautiful covers, some of the most wonderful art by a glorious artist named J.H. Williams III.
Yeah.
And the fun thing is getting to bring these characters out again.
Well, it's really great to talk to somebody who has such a passion for not just, obviously, what you do, but for the words and for the libraries.